Hello,
So,
everyone. Ah, fuck!
yeah, okay.
Ah!
Welcome. This is our podcast on how to start a podcast. Um, as you can hear, everything is going quite well so far. My name is Milo. I'm joined here by Frank, um,
That's me. I'm here
yeah.
as well.
and we're going to start a podcast. Uh,
Yep,
but we're unsure on how to start a podcast. So our first podcast will be about starting a podcast naturally.
it's fitting. We
It
have
is,
no
it
clue
is.
what we're doing. We have no clue.
Absolutely not. So hopefully we'll learn, and to anyone who's listening, our potential five viewers, listeners, hopefully we'll learn something as well. So maybe let's first address um, the main issue, a topic. What can we discuss in a podcast in general? What is there for us to discuss?
It's the main thing, really. Like, we want to convey information, and that you need a topic for that. Luckily, anything can be a topic, really. Usually, podcasts have like a theme, but not all of them have. And
No, I mean, like
yeah,
Joe Rogan is one of those most popular podcasts, and that's basically interview based, but it's about anything really, like anything goes, as far as I'm
yeah,
aware.
it goes
Um,
crazy. I'm not following it that well, but yeah, it goes all over the place and it's entertaining, and that's what matters really.
and I agree. Like we're both too young to be considered true experts on anything, really. I mean,
Hmm.
surely we both have some more specialized knowledge, uh, but I wouldn't consider us to be full on experts yet. So I wouldn't say there's anything in a particular field which we would be qualified to discuss well over other people. But
Ab-
entertainment is what we could do for sure.
exactly. Because indeed, absolutely nothing will we say like, oh, we are the experts. We are here to tell you all about it. No, no, we don't.
No,
We are
exactly.
learning with you in a way, but that could be fun as well. And I think the most important part of making a podcast is if you just enjoy the topic yourself, then that's a good part already.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And you know, both of us, it seems, we do have a wide range of knowledge,
And
in
interest.
its an interest, exactly, an interest.
Hmm.
So switching between topics doesn't sound too bad to me. It
No,
doesn't have to
no,
be stuck on one thing or one type of podcast. We don't have to make a uh, how to do your finances podcast or how to feel better podcast or how
no.
does history of the Romans work
I'm
podcast.
sure about all of these, there's podcasts. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Anything could be a podcast, but as long as we don't know necessarily what the topic is going to be, might as well switch it around a little bit, and that's totally
Hmm.
fine.
Hmm.
That's fine.
So, um, what this podcast will be about how to make a podcast, uh,
Yes.
and we are kind of now going to the direction of just whatever comes up we come up with. Um, what would our next podcast be about then?
Whew, that's a good question. I think
Yeah,
we
it is.
we we thought about some topics, but we didn't set on anything. Um, yeah, again, anything that interests us particularly, we think like, oh, we could talk like half an hour about this.
Half an hour, yeah.
Or some
Uh,
or less. Like podcasts vary a lot in length as well. But
mhm.
if you can't talk half an hour about it, well, maybe skip it, no?
Yeah, I could even imagine us honestly just to get some random Wikipedia page open and
Ooh.
with a somewhat interesting topic, both just reading this page and maybe some related pages to it and discussing whatever we read, uh,
Yeah, I like that
assuming we
actually. Yeah.
understood it. And this can be any Wikipedia page which we just find by our favorite random page on Wikipedia or something which we thought of before, but could be anything.
No, indeed, that's a great idea on its own. You're not necessarily doing that, but that shows like it can be about anything. And well, as long as you have some thoughts about it, which you like to share, it's a discussion worthy, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to be a bit more spontaneous, like hearted, things like that. Genuine, yes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, exactly. And uh, yeah, so now that we have kind of a topic, kind of an idea on what our podcast should be about, still very vague. Everything can still change. I mean, we haven't really um, decided anything definitively yet. But we could, I guess, get into a bit more detail or to next steps. Um,
Yes? Yes.
like, if with a podcast, we somehow want to publish.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I also don't know too much about this, but think about it the other way around. Where do you find your podcast, the one you listen to on a somewhat regular basis? For me, it's
So,
usually Spotify, but that's not a platform to publish. It's more a platform to share podcasts.
well, I mean, perhaps podcasts are not found on Spotify, but they're definitely listened to on Spotify. So I tend to listen to my Spotify or my podcasts on YouTube. I tend to find them
Yeah,
by YouTube,
fair.
and then I tend to watch these like 10 to maybe 20-minute clips. But sometimes I want to watch something longer, and those longer podcasts are usually on Spotify.
Yeah,
Um, so I would suggest to do both, to publish on both. Perhaps more shorter edited clips on Spotify on the YouTube, which then link to Spotify such that people can listen to it uh, on Spotify for the full episode.
yeah. I mean, like the publishing in as many sources as possible is usually good if you want to attract some audience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's good, and most of these things are free as well. I think Apple Podcast is also a thing. I don't use it myself, but I think it has a quite large audience base, so to say. Um,
I have no experience with it, but we can probably figure it out. It probably shouldn't be too tough to find that out. YouTube for sure
no,
isn't difficult. I mean, anyone can create a YouTube channel and just publish, so that's
no,
relatively
exactly.
easy.
It is quite low barriers, so to say, to even
Hmm.
make a podcast, but definitely to publish one. And
But
as I saw some statistics that many people took this hobby up around like the first or second lockdown of COVID. And that
that
makes
makes a lot of
sense.
sense.
Exactly. Like, okay, it dropped afterwards as well, but it's so low level to start. Might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. But that's quite nice, honestly, of podcasting.
So uh, apparently, if we want to publish on Spotify, it's slightly less straightforward than publishing on YouTube. Apparently, we need to host it somewhere else, and then we
Exactly. And
can
then you share it
link
to
it
Spotify.
through
Yeah.
Spotify. Probably shouldn't be too hard. There's several hosting platforms, uh, even some offered by Spotify itself. So even this, we should be able to simply
Exactly.
record, edit, and
That's
publish.
what I remembered. You cannot publish directly on Spotify, but they also make it relatively easy to share there. Your podcast, considering like they have so many podcasts to offer. And I think it's listened to quite a lot, so it's of course good for Spotify too.
But then to actually publish anything, there's for sure one more thing we need, most likely two more things.
Oh,
Uh,
many, yes.
One thing we for sure need is a name. We need to be found. We need to have a
Ooh,
not only titles for our episodes, but a name for the podcast itself. And
yes,
then on top of that, we'll probably need some picture art. I mean, in Spotify, you always have these album covers. On YouTube, you have YouTube channel logos. Um, and then,
yeah,
of course,
no,
yeah, every episode needs a name, but this is a bit more straightforward, I guess.
Absolutely. Like the title name of one podcast. You can find something, cover art. Of course, it helps. It's not crucial. The title, that's crucial. Like you cannot
It
go
is.
around that.
It
It needs
is.
to be catchy, easy to remember, to the point, and also not already used by another podcast, I'd hope.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important. And again, about that one, I thought a little bit, couldn't really find anything. I'm not the best with just finding names on the spot.
So we can brainstorm a little bit. So right now, the main idea we seem to have is that we'll discuss a lot of topics. And one of the ideas on how to do it is just to get a random topic, perhaps via Wikipedia, read a little bit on top on it, and just discuss whatever we think about it, whatever our thoughts are, and hope that we are smart, clever, and funny enough to make it entertaining and interesting
Oh,
for others. Um, so we we could use our own names somehow in the name of the podcast, like a lot of people do. But to me, it feels, I don't know, particularly because also with two, it doesn't feel too
mm,
straightforward to go for names. For
no.
first name podcast like the Frank and Milo show. It's a bit it's a cheap name. It's a cheap solution. I'm not
It's
opposed to it, but I think there's better names.
exactly like it's possible. It's not the first time it's being used. Again, that's good because well, people associate with podcasts, but it's bad. It's not so original. My most important thing is if a random person sees our name, they have no clue what this is all about. It's not
No, exactly.
very interesting to get into, I suppose.
We may as well be a radio DJ show with such a name. Or,
It might as well be. Yeah,
hmm but, hmm
I
what
like it to be
about? Oh,
short. Yeah,
yes, I agree. I agree. Short and catchy. Uh,
yeah.
what about something like 30-minute experts?
Okay,
In the sense
that's
that,
nice.
like, we give ourselves 30 minutes to read on something, and then we discuss for, I guess, 30 minutes or whatever. 30 minutes just means like a short amount of time. And experts, not that we're really experts, but we're quasi experts, namely
Exactly. The
only 30 minutes.
title isn't perfectly right, but it's catchy, it's clear, it gives a bit of an idea. Yeah, yeah, I like it. More than what I came up, which is discussy, like
Discussie.
uh, like the trend of rhyming words with that end. Which I don't know, it came up my mind. I didn't like it, but it stuck. But 30
Then
minute experts, not too bad.
from Discussie, I would make perhaps Discussify
Ooh,
because
yeah,
it sounds, but
yeah,
perhaps it sounds more like a platform like Spotify or Shopify. But that is
yeah,
not the bad thing
exactly.
necessarily. Discussify is not too bad, but it's a bit more general, uh, which
Mm-hmm.
can be good or bad, depends a bit on our perspective, of course. Uh,
No, but it's also the nice thing about your suggestion, like a 30-minute experts, is that it gives people an approximate time frame, which we don't have to adhere to. But I feel like if you encounter a podcast and you see already from the start it's going to be more than an hour long, it might be tricky for people to say, "Oh, listen to the whole thing," and maybe they're
mhm.
captivated within like 10 minutes. But I don't often listen to podcasts that are that long, I must say.
No, for sure, me neither. That's I like I said, I usually tend to stick to those shorter, 10 to 20-minute clips, not to full podcasts of like 2 hours. That's a bit overkill in my opinion.
Yeah,
Let's actually Google if some name like this exists already. 30
yeah, that's the
minutes.
problem. It might just be. It might just already exist.
Uh, 30-minute expert show.acast. 30-minute expert without an S is a podcast that attempts to make you expert on chosen topic half an hour or less, hosted on Acast. Seems to be 30-minute expert. It's singular though, so it's still different. But stock markets, cryptocurrency, dementia, the British political spectrum, Syria, anxiety. Yeah, this is very
It's
similar to
quite
what
different.
yeah, but it's very similar to what we would do. But if someone has this name already, that's of course uh
It's a bit unfortunate. I just checked the multiple experts. It doesn't seem to exist.
it doesn't
Uh,
pop up. No.
and no, and maybe like we have a different perspective. We're not making you an expert. We're making ourselves an expert.
Exactly. We don't know anything. Uh
Exactly. We're just trying to convey some information, make it interesting, but we're not gonna make you an expert. You got to do that yourself. I'm sorry.
mhm. If I Google for something like Discussify, I also don't find any results which seem
That surprises
similar.
me, honestly.
Uh, I mean, Discussify is a uh, Chrome add-on,
No,
but
wait, but
that doesn't.
I see some results in Apple Podcasts for Discussify. So
Ah, I see. I see. This
it
must be
didn't come
anything.
that far. It got 2 episodes, so unfortunately for them. But it certainly exists. Again, it shows that our ideas are not bad. It's just, oh, someone else already had that.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's a good thing, but we want to be unique, of course, at least in some extent.
Ideally, yes. Ideally, yes.
Hmm. Yeah. So the 30-minute expert podcast, by the way, it seems the last episode I can find is of March 2022. There
Oh,
have been quite a lot of episodes, but it seems to be over.
we can always
Uh,
pretend like we are the successors of them.
no, I mean
It's a bit
that's
dangerous.
let's not pretend that we're the. Hmm. I like the name a lot, but I think perhaps we should look into something else. Maybe we should.
It's an important decision, I'd say. Like the title
I
of the
would
podcast, you're not going to change
exactly.
that. So,
It's very important. It needs to relate to what you're discussing. It needs to be catchy. It's quite difficult. Perhaps it's even too difficult to discuss within one episode of a podcast. But uh,
yeah,
this is the
the things
episode
with
on how
these,
to discuss it, how to make a podcast. So we should.
we should, but the thing is, creativity cannot necessarily be forced.
That's fair. That's fair.
Maybe we
Uh,
come up something with something during podcast.
okay. Yeah, we can switch topic. Of
Yeah,
course. Of
yeah.
course.
I think that would be better. Um, I
What
would also
about
like to do.
I
Yeah,
just got
go ahead.
some
You got
inspiration.
that. You got something for me.
What about Wikipedia brothers? I
Well,
mean,
that covers the topic again.
exactly. Wikipedia. I'm writing them down. I mean, we're
Give it
not
to me.
brothers. We're
But
not
we are
even
brothers
related.
from another mother. No, we
We're
aren't.
brothers from another mother. Exactly. Um, a lot of the stuff which we'll use is from Wikipedia, but I don't like the fact that Wikipedia is too central. It's a bit too central in my opinion. Like I would like it to be a bit more general, not necessarily
It kind of is, huh? Yeah.
like or maybe just Wiki Brothers. That could already
That's already better. That is already better. It
Wiki.
gives like Wikipedia is more than just a site. It's a concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost synonym to information these days.
It is. It is. And Wiki, like a lot of these sites somehow use Wiki to show that they have something of information to store. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like Wiki Brothers is a fairly unique name already. I don't really see too many results coming up.
exactly, I don't see that either. And in my opinion, it's a good name.
It's a good name. It's on near the level of 30 seconds, 30 minutes expert. 30 seconds is maybe a little bit too quick.
It's on the list. I wrote it down. It's on the list. Um, so one
Good.
thing which those listening maybe are not aware of, both of us are doing a PhD at this moment in some technical
Yeah,
field. I'm doing it in mathematics, and you're doing it in space engineering, if I'm not mistaken,
but
aerospace.
we also call it mathematics over here.
You also call, well,
Yes.
mathematics PhDs.
Hmm.
Um, that could be reflected in the name. Although I'm not a big fan of
Oh,
flashing titles, to be honest, because it always feels a bit
a bit
disingenuous.
pretentious, right? Yes.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
there's no point.
But I don't want people to take our information for the fact that we don't even have PhDs at this moment. Uh,
That would,
but just I would like them to take the information for the content of what we're saying. But it could be
yeah.
something which we could use in the title anyway.
Yeah, you're looking for something unique or something special, so it's something to consider. But as you said, I'm not the biggest fan.
And like Doctor Wiki or Doctor Expert, but it's too no, and also Doctor sounds
No,
too medical.
it sounds medical. Doctor Expert sounds horrible in my opinion. Like it's
Yeah,
really just flashing whatever you claim to have. It's not
and
enough.
Wiki Brothers is a bit more approachable, right?
Yeah, totally.
All right, then we have a preliminary name. We can, of course, still change it by the end of the episode, but if
Yeah,
inspiration
let's
strikes,
keep it for now. Let's keep it
let's
for
keep it for
now. I
now. I
like
wrote
it.
it down. It's on the list. Uh, then we need more. I just discussed we need a title for this episode. Well, this episode will probably be called something like "How to Start a Podcast." But
Exactly what I wrote down.
we also need a picture art, something which reflects what we are. Now, in a
A little
auditive
bit, yeah.
podcast, it will be a bit tough to show our work, but we can at least
That's
discuss and then just make something afterwards. They will, of course, see the final result in the podcast itself.
yeah, yeah. It's not really a good medium to show things naturally.
Hmm.
I must say I'm not super good with graphic design. No.
Neither am
So
I,
so something
but
simple is probably better.
most likely. Um,
Do
but
you know if the Wikipedia like icon is copyright protected? It feels like
it,
it might be.
uh, I mean, I could imagine it is protected under some kind of copyright which doesn't allow you to share it for commercial purposes, but in other ways you would be able to share it freely. So I'm not sure if we should use this one.
No, no,
Also
like not
because we're not
not
associated.
only. Absolutely. It helps with the name,
Hmm.
but exclusively for sure not. And you gotta be careful with these kind of things. Like you always have to check if you're allowed to use these images.
Exactly, exactly. We should never publish
It's no
something.
joke.
I mean, you can of course use images which are protected just casually in your own chats or whatever.
Oh,
But
totally.
as soon as you publish something, you should always be careful with
Absolutely.
with your stuff. So you said you're not the best in graphic design. Neither am I. But we could instead of designing something in Photoshop or whatever, we could take a picture of something nice and just add some nice
Oh
filter
yeah.
on it and use that.
Didn't even think about that. Yes.
Then we don't have to edit too much. Like the
Yeah,
logo is
and for
something a little bit more flexible. It doesn't have to be completely static. We can have a version one and an update later if we feel like it. In my opinion, of
it,
course, it's
it
nice
totally, totally.
if you have something good.
Uh, but it does capture the eye. Like apart from the title, people look at the icon, and the icon
For
doesn't
sure, for
necessarily
sure.
have to say too much. One of my favorite podcasts, the icon is just like the guy himself. That's not what I would like to do, but it doesn't really say too much. It just works.
It
But the
does work.
photo is not too bad. It's not. It's a nice idea.
But the problem about uh, us as on the photo is that at the moment there don't exist any great pictures with just the two of us. And unfortunately, we are slightly far away from each other, let's say, to
Totally
take such a
true.
picture at the moment.
It does not have my preference. I
So
like something like sleek.
sleek, something sleek. What do you mean
Yeah,
by that?
I don't know. Sharp, I say for sure. Well thought of, so to say. It's not an arbitrary picture of like a building or a tree. No, the composition is just right. It's a sharp image, saturation ideally high. Yeah,
High
that's what I'm
saturation.
thinking of. Yeah, yeah,
Um, we could take a picture of a book which is turned open to a page, but the book itself is not really legible.
yeah. You
Uh,
focus on something before you don't really read the letters.
yeah, exactly,
Um,
exactly. But it's clear that it is a book by just the way it unfolds. Um,
yeah, you want some connection with like with learning, with knowledge, stuff like that. You know.
yeah, exactly. Some,
So a book is a classic. It works. It just works.
yeah. Uh, if you want to be a bit more large, you can take a picture of a library, but it's usually not as nice because it also becomes a bit more specific, you know.
More cluttery. Yeah, exactly. It's a bit messy then. I like just one focus on the either a book or like a writing equipment or something like that. Maybe like classical writing equipment.
All right, then uh, I think I have some pictures made by myself, so no copyright issues. Otherwise, I can try to make a picture in the next week or so, which would capture this idea.
Yeah,
So
that
then we
sounds
have,
totally good.
yeah, then we have our cover art covered. We have a title for the first episode. We have uh, a potential title for the podcast itself. Now,
And that's really all you need, really. You can of course flare it up a little bit, like intro music or things like that. But a podcast, it has limited media, so to say, and that's totally fine.
now there are still some technical things which could be necessary. Well, I would even argue which are necessary, such as recording. I mean, we have to record somehow.
Naturally.
There's many programs which allow you to record stuff. You can just record something on your phone, but the two of us, we are choosing to record via Audacity.
Hmm.
Um, we're both recording it separately. We're not in the same room even, and we're having a call via Discord at the moment. We could change the platform maybe later on, but right now this is a Discord call with Audacity audio recording.
Yeah, it just works. I think we used it because we both somewhat familiar with the software, and what you really want is just the highest quality audio you can get at the moment. Sure, that depends on microphone, the room you're in, blah blah blah. But you just have to use the tools that you currently have. And if you're going to record someone else's voice via phone or like a call, the quality is dropping. So you better record it separately and then synchronize it later.
Exactly. And what is also nice about Audacity is that you can, uh, it's free and it has some tools which should reduce noise and perhaps boost some of the frequencies in which our voices speak. How well this works, I'm not sure. You'll probably hear it in the podcast itself. So give us
We'll have to
feedback
figure that out.
on how that is. But yeah, so there's plenty of free programs which you can use to actually start a podcast, and you don't need that many tools. So right now with a computer, we have a microphone integrated in our headset, and we have Discord to discuss. Um, that seems to be all all you need. Um,
Yeah, it's the basics really. Of course, it's a microphone in your laptop or your phone. That might just not cut it for a podcast, I'd say. You want some minimum audio quality and some minimum editing, ideally. But despite it being like a very low barrier, you could of course already purchase some good equipment, really get into it. I think that's a bit dangerous if you're just about to start. You want to grow into it, see if you like it, see if you're gonna keep up with it, and then understand also better what you could buy to improve the experience, so to say. I
Exactly,
don't know right now. Later I
exactly.
will maybe.
Right now, as a starter, I don't know what our weak points are. Um, I don't know what anyone's reason would be to listen to us, but I also don't know what anyone's reason would be to stop listening to us. And if we record a bit more, listen a bit more to what we're saying, and perhaps get some feedback from some people, we would know what to invest in. Or perhaps we learn that this is not a hobby for us. Maybe we don't like making podcasts and we haven't invested a rip into equipment or software uh, or even a professional editor. We
Yeah.
just do everything basically bootstrapped, homemade, which is nice in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice that you can just try out. Not many hobbies you can try out with basically any investment in it. And yeah, you just gotta see if you like it. But I like what you said as well. You're not doing it only for yourself. A podcast is meant to be listened to people by people. So if you get a little bit of feedback, it's appreciated. You get steered a little bit in the direction that other people like it. Hopefully, you as well.
So we just discussed that we would publish this on YouTube, potentially also Spotify and maybe Apple Podcast. I don't know about Apple or Spotify, but for sure on YouTube, we people can leave comments. So if there's any feedback, of course, feel free to leave a comment. As this will be our first episode, I'm quite certain that we'll read every single comment with full enthusiasm. Um,
Yeah, and I think indeed on most podcast platforms, it's not super standard to leave comments. From what I gathered, most podcasters leave like an email address that you can send mails to. I don't think we have one for that podcast, so let's not do that
no, let's keep it simple. But
right now. Yes.
as at the moment we uh, basically discussed the ways to start up a podcast. There's still what we still don't have is a kind of mm, we don't have a schedule, and I mean it in two ways. Both in the sense that we don't know yet when and how often we will make a podcast and publish, but we also don't have topics filled in or a way to fill in the topics for the coming podcasts.
No, it's absolutely true. And I think for beginning podcast, I think personally it's quite good to have some sort of consistency
For sure,
schedule.
for sure.
Um,
So we have
and
to
that
decide.
also, yeah,
No, we have to
go
decide
ahead.
one. We have to make a
Yeah,
make a schedule for ourselves.
totally. So something reasonable. Ideally, you have a few already lying around before you want to publish one, just so that you don't have backlog and no stress. I mean, it's your hobby. You should be stressed for it. But some work goes into it. Editing, researching, recording. It's you shouldn't overwork yourself. I was
No.
thinking on the order of like every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, I like the bi-weekly. So once in the 2 weeks, I think it's nice because it leaves you enough time. So recording takes basically one day. I mean, a short day, like an afternoon or an evening, and then editing can take another day, perhaps the same day, but one week later. Uh, so then you can do this consistently in this rhythm, recording once every 2 weeks, editing once every 2 weeks, and then basically once per week you work on your podcast. People should not underestimate how long it takes to edit, particularly if you're inexperienced. Um, so if you are starting something, uh, publishing once a week is not necessarily too ambitious, but more often than that can definitely creep up to you if you also have a job on the side, or if you study, or if podcasting is not your main time of your day.
Absolutely. I think quite a few people just they are very enthusiastic at the beginning. So you have the energy and the time to make a few episodes, but to do that for like weeks or months after each other, it's gonna be tricky. And maybe at some point you just don't enjoy it anymore and you drop it. That would be kind of a waste. Yeah, as you said, like the editing is a big part. I'm pretty sure that almost all podcasts you would listen to, they have a big amount of editing, so that sounds really smooth and really nice. Just takes time.
It for sure does. It for sure does. Now, uh, in terms of editing for us, particularly because we don't use video, it would mainly be uh, adjusting our audio quality and making sure we are synchronized, which of course we aren't perfectly synchronized by the fact that we also listen to each other on Discord, but we should be synchronized such that if you listen to the podcast, it sounds like a normal conversation which we're having. And this shouldn't be too difficult, but again, since we're both relatively inexperienced with audio editing, this is still something which should not be taken too lightly.
Yeah, and like we're talking about it, but we don't actually know about it yet. We have to see it ourselves.
Now, on what day should we publish and in what time?
Say again?
What time and what day should we publish?
Hmm.
I
I
mean,
have actually no clue about that.
we're located in Western Europe, Amsterdam time zone, so I would suggest to publish it which in a time suitable for this time zone, given that most likely most of our at least early listeners will be just our contacts directly
That's
uh,
fair.
from our time zone. So, when do you listen to podcasts usually? What is your
Exactly.
time when you
I
listen to
wanted to say
podcasts?
that. Like, what is a comfortable time for people to listen to podcasts?
Well,
And it's
when do
either
you
when
listen
they
to a
have,
podcast?
yeah, yeah, no, no. I was about to say that. So either when I have plenty of free time and I just think like, oh, what should I do? Let's listen to a podcast and actively listen to it. So that's usually on the weekends, some late evenings. But I also notice I regularly listen to a podcast when I either have something to do or I'm like going to work or things like that. It's background. I listen to it, but not super concentratedly. And I know that plenty of people also listen to it, to podcasts on their way to work, on their way to school, when they're
I
cleaning the house or something like that. It's a
so
bit tricky to schedule that exactly, though.
I yeah, because my podcast listening behavior is completely different from what you just described. I almost never actively listen to a podcast. It's almost exclusively background. Not when I'm traveling, because I find it a bit too distracting when I'm traveling. Actually, usually when I'm working on something, when I'm
Whew.
in the office doing some mathematics or whatever, then I have some podcast on the background to keep my thoughts going. Um, which is which would suggest that something like a Wednesday morning or Wednesday night, such that on Thursday morning it can be listened, would be a good time. But what you suggest would be rather aiming for the weekend.
Yes, it's quite different, I'd say. Like as you said, listening to it while working, I can't imagine doing that. I find it very difficult to even listen to music which has lyrics in it while I'm working.
We could perhaps make a compromise to kind of encapsulate both audiences and publish it on, let's say, Friday morning around 11, because then
Hmm.
uh, you could listen to it Friday afternoon during work, but you could also listen to it Friday evening or Saturday morning when you have your free time. Of course,
Yeah,
it's a podcast. People can listen to it whenever they want. They can wait a week to listen to it,
No,
but those
yeah.
who are following it and want to listen directly, they could listen within 24 hours after publishing in both scenarios we just sketched.
That is ideal. And to be fair, I basically never listen to a podcast the moment it comes out.
Me
I,
neither.
I find a suitable time for it, but it does help with remembering that you still have a podcast episode to listen to. You don't want it to be forgotten.
So then we decided our publishing day will be roughly the 11 Friday once every 2 weeks.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Wow, great, great. And then um, how do we decide what topic to discuss? Will we discuss that in the previous episode, or will we just come up with a topic uh, during the episode? Because that seems a little bit too much to
Ooh,
me.
during
Or
the episode,
within our
probably not.
2 week time frame, I think it's best to just think of a topic within the 2 week time frame, which gives us both some time to read up on it, in particular to read the Wikipedia page, of course, because right now we're still stuck to the name Wiki Brothers.
Hmm. No, I like what you're saying. I also have a few thoughts about that because there are some advantages of having a very spontaneous podcast or an interview or something like that. But you're running the risk that you're not going as much in depth as you would like to because you hadn't had time to think about it. And if you already like speculating about ideas at the end of the previous podcast, there's a quite large chance that none of these ideas will come into practice, which is a bit
Yeah,
anticlimactic in a way.
fair point. So the topic of each podcast will always be a surprise for all the listeners every time a new podcast is uploaded.
Yes, and especially with spontaneity of like finding the topic during the podcast. There's so many Wikipedia articles about this random crap or bacteria. Like, I don't care about that. I'm very sorry. I'm not gonna spend 30 minutes talking about that. So we need to find a nice one.
No, although I do agree that these crabs don't interest me too much. There are plenty of random Wikipedia pages of which I think they don't interest me, but once I start reading, they would interest me.
Oh, absolutely. But
So I would not necessarily just discard the random article
the random
option.
article is good. It's just not necessarily the first page which comes up because there's not only many about random crabs, there's many which have like one or two sentences, and that's just not enough.
Fair point.
I like the random article a lot because it basically it it says that we will have a huge variety of topics. It doesn't even make sense how large variety can be about topics that we don't know anything about. And I like that idea. We'll see how it comes into practice, but I like the concept.
I do too. I'm just right now playing a little bit with the random article button, and I just got to a page called the Basava script, which is also known as Va, meaning throwing a sign, which is a alphabetic script of the Bassa language in Liberia. These are all things which I knew nothing about, but apparently it has 23 consonants, 7 vocals with 5 tones. Uh, so it's quite an extensive alphabet, and
Yeah,
I'm already quite intrigued. Like, what even is this Bassa language? Well, I don't suggest that right now. I will read the page
that
to
would
find
not
out,
be
but
ideal.
this does show the potential of this random
It
article
shows the
button.
potential. And I just wanted to stress, like, despite us being mathematics students, we are interested in like a wide variety of things. Like for
Oh,
this
for sure,
topic, I know like you're into linguistics, so you know a bit
for
about
sure.
it, and you can talk about it. And many other topics, yes, we like. So that's totally fine. So just to recap, like just in the matter of like half an hour, we found a name, we found a topic, we found a schedule, a general idea for the podcast, even as far as like a logo and a way to publish. And it's that easy sometimes. As long as you have a bit of inspiration and a genuine interest in doing this, You can just make a podcast. That's nice.
Exactly. Now, I must note that there's one thing which I feel like is missing a little bit from this podcast in particular. So usually when we are together, we speak a lot and we can switch topics relatively easily and quite naturally as well. Of course, usually we are not being recorded, and usually when we speak in our native language, which makes things significantly easier, I would say. Um, and as a result of that, there tend to be a bit more humor involved than there is right now. Right now, it seems a bit dry, a bit serious. I would like to be more humorous as well. Of course, it's a tough thing to force, but I think a podcast which has a bit of lightness to it, a bit of humor, particularly if we discuss random topics on Wikipedia, such as the Otter Creek Township in Lucas County, Iowa. Uh, it would be nice that we have some humor as well, because, of course,
No,
things
of
are a bit more
course.
interesting to listen to if there's also some fun involved.
No, of course. And like, this is a good point. It doesn't completely feel natural for us yet to speak in such a context. Hopefully, that will improve.
Wow, I just
And
found a.
that,
Oh yeah, go, please continue.
no, no, go ahead. I'd like to listen to what kind of weird things you found today.
No, right now I found a page called
Yes.
Lamini. Lamini is members are also called Lemonoids. Is a tribe of the subfamilia of the Camillinae, but it just looks like a llama. It's just a type of llama, and they describe the characteristics that the llama, also known as the llama glama, is the largest of the extant lemonoids and weighs between 130 and 150 kilograms, 290 or 330 pounds, and it's roughly 115 centimeters, like 45
Right, right.
inches at the shoulder. Um,
Yeah, that's amazing. I love llamas.
yeah, I know
That's
nothing about them, but the name Llama Glama is
that's
definitely one to
that's a
remember.
that's a really good one. Yes, remember that. I just want to touch on one point, which I don't think we have really mentioned, and that is, we laid out a bit of an idea how to make a podcast, but I think it's also just good to talk about why do you even want to start a podcast.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And yeah, Milo, go ahead. What do you see in it?
So I have the feeling that uh, for a long time I've enjoyed learning wide, not necessarily deep, but wide. And I have the feeling that at this point my knowledge is wide enough that it is time to share something. So I would like to discuss some topics, some things which just come up in my head, some things which I've read a long time ago, touch base, share opinions. But on top of that, I would also like to be able to talk in public or in recording more confidently. And I am of the
Yes,
opinion that the more often you do something like this, the better you'll get at it. It's a simple practice
clearly,
thing.
clearly, it's practice. Yeah,
What about you? Like, what reason? It
that's
was your
fair.
initiative.
That's
What is your initiative
It
as
was
well?
my initiative. So my idea is, I like what you're explaining. I'm more of a person. I like to explain. I like to talk. I have enthusiasm about these topics, and I want to convey this enthusiasm to others. I have a little bit of history in like journalism. I've wrote for a magazine. I don't do that anymore, but I quite like that. I like to dig a bit into a new concept and just explain it in a nice way, maybe even less dry than it was originally. And apart from that, I don't think it could hurt to practice some of the skills indeed, like discussing, interviewing, talking, but also editing and things like that. And I think a podcast is a really nice medium to do things like that.
Yes, I also particularly like these longer formats much more than the short 30 seconds
Whew, 30
interviews.
seconds.
That's we actually
That you
have
really
time to
mean
discuss.
30 seconds?
Yeah, 30 seconds, like those TV interviews you get on the news where they get
Oh,
some random
wow.
stranger, they discuss something, they ask 5 questions, and then that's it. Uh,
Yeah, that can be
or
funny, but that's not what it's all about.
or your standard TikTok format where
Fair.
everything has to be done in a very short time frame. There's no actual sharing of ideas. They're just buzzwords at that point. But right
Not,
now we've been
yeah.
talking for so around 50 minutes, and we're actually discussing ideas. Maybe not the most interesting at this point, but we can of course make it interesting by discussing the Lama Glama, uh,
Oh,
for instance, or
for
the
instance.
famous
Oh.
game Beezy Geesley. I
As
never
long
heard
as
of
these
this.
things rhyme, I like it, you know?
Yeah,
I'm into
exactly,
that.
exactly. There's a lot of rhyming on Wikipedia going on apparently. Uh, so, how much do you
Yes.
know about Jacqueline, the Countess of Hainaut?
High note? That sounds maybe Belgium, but
Uh,
that's where my knowledge is that it is maybe Belgium.
well, it's the Countess of Holland and Zealand. So,
Hmm,
apparently,
not too
it's
bad.
buried in The Hague. So,
Ah, well, I haven't seen her there. I'm very sorry.
so this is something, one of the things which we could at some point discussed in depth. I mean, the Wikipedia page is not even short of this person. I would say reading this page definitely takes like 5 to 10 minutes. So
Okay, now that's good. There are definitely many people with interesting stories. It shouldn't be for like the sake of it that we pick this random person. They
no, no,
should
no,
have something interesting about her, you know?
no. Of course, of
But
course, of course, of course. But
many people have. If you dig deep enough, many people have something interesting to share.
I would even argue that everything can be interesting as long as we make it interesting.
A strong statement. I mostly agree. Yes.
And I think that at this point, likely we are not skilled enough yet to make every topic interesting.
Oh, absolutely not.
uh, Likely we don't have deep enough opinions about a lot of topics to make it interesting or to make it sound interesting, and we don't have um, the entertainment talents to make any topic interesting as of yet. But potentially in the future we will have. But right now,
Ex-
best is to stick to a topic which is interesting of itself, and then try to expand from that onward, rather than
No,
deep dive
totally.
immediately.
You should be realistic, and that's also advice for most people who are starting podcasts. Be realistic with your expectations and your current skills, and just have the mindset that oh, you want to start a podcast, you want to talk about something, maybe you'll improve on the way, hopefully. But don't expect that you're gonna have so many listeners from nowhere. Like that's just not gonna happen.
But
Hopefully they grow over time, but it's handful probably at start.
yes, particularly not in the beginning, it can take many years before even something happens, if something will happen at all. So most important is that you enjoy it. Otherwise, it's somewhat wasted time. Uh, but so far, so good, I would say.
Oh yes, totally. And I like that perspective. I read that somewhere. I think it applies to also like Twitch streamers and stuff like that. Even if you see like three or four people in your audience, just imagine that they're in your room for some reason and they're sitting on a chair and they're listening to you talking. That's kind of cool. I think that's kind of
It is kind of cool, although one or three or five doesn't look like a lot when you see it in a YouTube views number. If you imagine them as actual individuals living somewhere, then it becomes kind of cool. Yeah.
cool. Yeah, but I'd rather have them sitting in their own room listening to them than in my room. I would
Oh,
be a
for
bit
sure.
uncomfortable.
For sure. One topic maybe related to how to start a podcast is how do we it's a not super necessary topic, but definitely something to be discussed. How do we promote a podcast? How do we make this number
Yes.
5 perhaps 500 or potentially 500,000. I'm not saying it's realistic, but how would we do such a thing?
I was just about to ask that. Like advertising a podcast works in weird ways, I think. My thoughts is you start with family and friends. Just say if you are indeed happy with what you created and you're kind of proud, just say like, "Oh, that's our podcast. Give it a listen." But it's kind of mysterious how podcasts grow and where your viewers sometimes, oh, listeners, let's call them listeners, where they come from. Sometimes it makes zero sense, yeah, but they just hear.
So I can imagine two main ways of finding podcasts. Perhaps there's more, but two main ways. First is word of mouth. For
Yeah.
this, friends and families is a great start, of course. Hopefully, they will see that what you create is actually decent and they will share it with others, and then potentially you can get a consistent audience. But the second one is through other platforms in the sense that so like I said, I enjoy listening to podcasts, but not in their whole, but in shorter versions, in shorter clips.
Hmm.
What I could imagine is to get the podcast, clip it into 10, 20, maybe 5 minute sections, which, if they are interesting enough to be uploaded individually on YouTube, then we upload them to YouTube and then hope that somehow some of these videos will be caught by the algorithm and then
The
people
algorithm,
find these
yes.
individual videos and then from this individual video it is more straightforward to go to the full length podcast because
Yeah,
starting a
yeah.
1 hour video or 1 hour podcast when you don't know who they are uh, only makes sense if someone personally recommended it to you. But
Yes.
these smaller videos seem more approachable.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like I haven't really had experiences with these kinds of formats, but they make sense to me. And like you give a small snippet, if people like it, they're going to maybe listen to the whole thing. If they don't like it, they wouldn't listen to your thing anyway.
Exactly, exactly.
And a bit of like actively promoting it, just finding the right channels, it definitely doesn't hurt.
For
I
sure.
think you're missing one way of that people find podcasts is simply through like the search query. Maybe indeed if we get a bit larger and people look for wiki, we might show up somewhere on the first or second page. And don't forget, on many platforms, you can also like write a short description of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are some words in there for example, these super specific Wikipedia articles. If for some reason some person wants to look for this weird baroness on Spotify, well, there's a good chance our podcast will pop up. Uh, that might
That's
be
fair,
interesting
yeah.
for them. Yeah,
I was also still thinking that uh, because this podcast will be our podcast, one way to promote it would be to promote it ourselves, as in we make some, I don't know, TikToks or whatever, but it doesn't seem like us to do, to be honest.
no, not really genuine, not really natural, but it's
Exactly.
definitely possible. If you're a podcast creator and you're really proud of what you made, I think it's only makes sense that you actively try to promote it as yours, as you being part of it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's of course not bad to promote your podcast at all. I'm just saying that this specific type of marketing doesn't seem very genuine for the two of us, given that we're not um, the biggest users of social media in this form. So I would stick to word of mouth via friends and family, and then perhaps clipping it if we find some interesting bits which are discussed interesting enough to be shared individually.
Absolutely. And what I just like as an idea again, sure, it's nice to advertise something you made yourself, but it's even nicer if someone who you recommended it to, like a friend, a family member, is talking good about you or your podcast or promoting it a little bit themselves. Well, that's a good kick.
Mm-hmm. For sure,
Just feels good.
for sure, definitely a confidence booster.
Yes. And as long as one thing, like that's, I have a strong opinion about that, no advertisements. Especially when you're starting. It doesn't make sense. People don't like it, advertisers in your
Oh no, absolutely not. Uh, I I mean, I honestly didn't give any thought to advertisements at all. Um, but for starting people, that doesn't make sense. Like, if we are going to advertise anything, uh, I'm not saying it will happen, but suppose we get approached by a sponsor or um, an advertiser, it would only make sense if we have a consistent listening base, and then preferred method would be us discussing a certain topic which happens to be interesting of a sponsor, and not have a 30-second clip random cutting our interview in half, or a
podcast. I hate
discussion in
those.
half. Um, like I completely agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
I
not.
think
Definitely not right now. Absolutely not.
no, absolutely not. And I don't like the idea in general. Like one of my favorite news podcasts, they just started adding advertisements at the start and the end, and it's like a 3 minute podcast.
A 3 minute
That's
podcast
unfortunate.
with advertisements.
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
that's too
it's
much.
ridiculous.
And like if we, like I said, if we clip this and put some individual 5 minute pieces on YouTube, and YouTube decides to play some advertisements on it, that's one thing. But uh, if we make a podcast which is 3 minutes and then put two advertisements in there, that's that's too much.
That's not kind to your audience. Come on, it's
No,
kind
it's
for
not
yourself.
not only that, your podcast becomes a commercial with some discussion halfway through.
Oof. Yes. It's a bit ironic because it's actually a news podcast, and that's exactly what happens on the radio too. It's a short fragment of news encapsulated with advertisements. Well, that's our society.
Hmm.
Uh, I wanted to get to one more point, and that is, well, if you listen to a podcast yourself, there's certain things you like and certain things you don't like, and that's good information to know when you're making something yourself. So I was just wondering, the podcast you listen to, what do you like in that, and other podcasts that you don't listen to, what don't you like about those?
So one thing which I seem to enjoy a lot is somehow some confidence in what is said, particular if it's about a topic which I am not too familiar with.
Huh? Yeah.
So I like to be be brought into some kind of argument, some train of thought, and this train of thought, if the person explaining it seems confident, it feels so much more engaging, and usually it is explained in a much better way by people who are confident, that I have the feeling that I'm learning more, because my attention is there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
on the same end, what I don't like is if people who are talking have, it's not a very personal thing, but if they have an annoying voice, or somehow uh, something is recorded poorly, or if this confidence is overconfidence, where they are
Oh
trying to
God,
sell
yeah.
something which uh, clearly they shouldn't be so confident in, or if the arguments which they are making are just buzzwords rather than actual proper arguments, um, then this whole train of thoughts, it kind of falls apart. Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, also if someone has not the nicest voice to listen to, it's tough to keep the attention there. So the content could be of high quality, but because I couldn't keep attention to the process itself, I still would argue it's not as nice to, yeah, to listen to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay.
So if you want to learn from those preferences, I would say uh, be confident in what we're saying, uh, and practice talking elegantly and
Mm-hmm.
eloquently as well. So, what
I
about you?
like
Do you
what
have any?
you
Any preferences?
Yeah, I mostly like what you talked about. That actually the first thing that comes to your mind is not necessarily the topic. It seems definitely secondary from what you mentioned, but more the way of talking and like the style of the narrator,
Mm-hmm.
the voice, the ability to keep a good story. It's really crucial in a podcast. It's the only thing you have in terms of communication. So it better be good and captivating. You want to keep people's attention, and if the voice just isn't nice to listen to, well, that can be unfortunate. But yeah, you're not gonna listen to it. But many of the times, especially like I like history podcasts,
Yeah,
quite a
likewise.
few history podcasters just don't seem to be that interested in their own topic or just have a very monotone voice or very silent voice.
I,
I don't like that so much either.
I agree. On the
Yeah.
contrary, I recently listened to a podcast by Joe Rogan. I don't really listen to all his podcasts, but this particular podcast was he was discussing someone who has a deep interest in Atlantis and how Atlantis is discussed in history, what it should be, where it potentially is. These are all things which I haven't thought about since I was probably 10. Uh, but by the way, by his enthusiasm for this topic and by his confidence in the things which he was saying, he brought so much enthusiasm over to me that I watched. I'm not sure how long it is, but several hours worth of Atlantis
Wow.
is in some Western Sahara desert place, and there's a lot of evidence for it. And he brought it so confidently um, that I learned a lot about a topic which seemed completely uninteresting for anyone older than 12. But apparently it is still interesting, even if you are older than 12. So
Apparently it
that's
is.
that's the that's what I would aim to be. Realistically, we're not there
Yeah.
yet, but I hope we can get there at some point.
Yeah,
Discussing
it's the
topics.
magic of entertainment in that way. That even if you weren't looking to listen to this guy for so long, you still did because honestly, from the start, it captivated you. And we're listening to a podcast for amusement usually, so that's perfect for a podcast setting. And naturally, when I'm looking for a podcast actively, I tend to look to something I am either already interested in, or it just sounds interesting from the title, or maybe I know already the podcast is something like that. So the topic is still important. I'm not going to listen to any random podcast, even if it has a good storytelling.
No, 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 no. That's true. You do need some somewhat interesting topic, uh, at least to start it. And I must say, like this whole "how is Atlantis" thing, it sounds kind of like a conspiracy theory, and it sounds very ridiculous. But
Well,
if like the way these arguments were brought, it kind of became a historical uh, podcast rather than a conspiracy theory podcast,
hmm,
which then all of a sudden became very interesting nonetheless. And if it was titled something like "Oh, we have found Atlantis," I would probably not have clicked on it because
no.
it sounds clickbaity. I honestly don't even remember what I saw that made me watch the entire thing, but uh, the there should be some interest to begin with to engage us or engage whoever, and then we can stretch it out with some full length
Yeah,
podcast.
naturally, it's mild clickbaiting. I'd say I don't like that word, but if it is promising something and you actually deliver on that, then well, there's not too much of a debate. It's for real, but
And
you need to put a little bit of effort into trying to get people to listen.
for sure. And I think we're kind of in an advantage by the fact that, well, right now we would be called the Wiki Brothers, and we will have kind of a lot of topics to discuss. Also, topics which are not related to each other, which hopefully allows us to catch the attention of a lot of people, or a lot of different type of people who then would tick to us. That would be, of course, ideal.
It's ideal. I've been thinking about that, and there's a lot of points in that. Like first of all, we're definitely not the only ones who just have no particular focus
For
for
sure.
topics of a podcast. So it's more difficult to stand out, in all fairness, or to maybe to get a consistent audience. But on the other hand, it might just help getting a consistent audience if we can get our own style, so to say, in how we approach these topics and how we discuss them. That could appeal to people. I mean, that should appeal to
That
people if
should
they're
be
going to stick with it.
exactly.
That
That
should
should
be
be the
the
factor.
selling point. Yes.
How we bring things across. That is what differentiates us from the many hundreds, maybe thousands of other podcasts out there. Uh, and I mean, like I said, we are no true experts on anything that someone else hasn't already done a podcast about. So it is the style which should win people's hearts and bring us an audience.
Yes, and mate, most podcasters they are not experts naturally. And don't forget, like one important branch or niche of podcasting or style is to be the interviewer, to regularly get guests like Joe Rogan. You are basically admitting, like, oh, I'm absolutely not an expert, but I'd like to learn, and my skill is interviewing or having a nice discussion. You don't have to be an expert in anything in that case.
Well, we have, in that sense, we are a bit disadvantaged because we are already with two. Um, so getting a third person on here would make things a bit crowded. Uh,
Yes.
However, that brings me to some other idea, which would be that uh, when we discuss a topic, what we could do is have one person read a lot on it, like really a lot, and the other
Mm.
person a a bit, like such that they know what is happening, but they're far from an expert. They're more uh, novel. So one reads like the first section of the Wikipedia page. The other person can read the entire page, all clicking links, Google some things on their own to get a proper opinion about things, and then this whole interview style makes sense again.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a nice way to well, get out of balance, so to say,
Exactly. Then
to create a new equilibrium, to see a bit how what you can do with this concept. I like it. I like it.
to get our to get some rules. And this person who reads the entire page, I would want it not to be the same person. I would not want to
No, of course
flip
not.
this.
No,
Otherwise, we get into these kind of fake interviews, and I don't want to have fake interviews. I
no,
want to uh,
natural.
exactly. And also, it doesn't have to be Wikipedia, of course. I mean, there's a lot of things which I know a lot of, which you don't, and vice versa. Some things you know a lot of, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
nothing or hardly anything about. And we could pick such a topic, and then me asking questions to you or you asking questions to me becomes very natural again. Whereas if we're both experts or something which we know very, very well, discussing becomes a bit more pointless because no one has anything to gain at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would
Yeah.
propose that for whatever topic we pick, we both read up on it, but one person reads just a bit and the other
Just
person reads a lot, and then questions can be asked or stories can be told much more naturally.
yeah, you have genuine reactions as well. One of us has reactions maybe similar to the audience, and that just yeah, it's nicer. Nice idea. Didn't think about that.
Sure. Uh, by the way, do you know? I just thought of this. There's this game which makes you link two Wikipedia pages together in the shortest amount of jumps
Yeah,
or in a certain
the
amount of
seven
time.
6 degrees of Wikipedia, something like that.
6 degrees of Wikipedia. Because,
I think that was the name, like similar to if you
yes,
have six links to any person in the world or something like that to your friendships or handshakes.
yes.
Wikipedia is similar.
So I just found it's indeed called 6 degrees of Wikipedia, but this is just uh, a linker, like it finds the links
Oh,
itself, but I thought there was also a game available.
yeah, I'm pretty sure we played that during times we should have done something else.
Yeah, where
So to
you
say.
just you start on a page, you're given a random other page, and then you have to try to find your path from one from one page to the other
Yeah,
just by clicking
like
hyperlinks.
racing. Yes.
And uh, I would like to become an expert on this
Phew.
by the end of our podcast, whatever that means.
Well, I hope we definitely learned something over the time about things we didn't know and maybe need some weird links on Wikipedia. I think it's a fine goal. Yeah.
Apparently, it's called the wiki game, I think.
Hmm. Doesn't really ring a bell, but it could be. It could be.
Yes, it's called the wiki game. So by the wiki game, right now I'm starting on a page of anarchism, and I have to go to supernatural in 70 seconds. Uh, and I'm not sure how to do it. I'm not going to play the game right now, but
No, not now.
apparently it's always possible in 6 links. And
Yeah, it should be. Cool.
if we
Cool.
browse Wikipedia often enough, we should be able to become true experts on this
Yeah,
topic.
and it's nice because there's so incredibly much information on Wikipedia, and many of them are thoughtfully written out and just they're interesting. I'd
Most
like to just read more about it.
Almost all the knowledge that humankind has is somehow present on Wikipedia.
That's pretty wild to think about, actually. At least on like the superficial level,
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah,
should
for
all be
sure.
there.
For on the superficial level,
That's
basically everything
crazy.
is there.
God.
In a slightly deeper level, perhaps a bit less, but for most purposes, Wikipedia suffices,
Yeah,
and that is indeed kind of crazy.
yeah.
So, one topic on how to make a podcast is how to end a podcast,
Yes,
in particular
yes.
an episode. Like what is a natural way to end it?
I think Um, so okay, there's again a variety of what I listen to. The history ones, they're more of a storytelling. They guide you through time. So at some points they just wrap up the episode. They maybe look forward to the next one.
What does
There's
it
not really an
mean
end.
to wrap up an episode? Like what how do they do that? Because it's a very vague statement, wrapping up.
I want no. I want to talk to say that. I think in most podcasts, especially ones which are a bit more informative, it's good to have a small summary on the end, maybe like the points that you really want to get across to your audience.
Okay. Uh, and then just sign off saying goodbye. See you next time.
Well, usually they have some sort of outro, indeed, that comes with time. I don't know myself really.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly I've listened to enough podcasts, but strangely enough, right now I can't even think of a single outro, like not even one. Which I mean, I know a lot of them use outro music, but how they move from the talking part to the music part, where does what's happening?
I
I
don't feel
can't
like
think of
it
anything.
really goes that smooth, so to say. But if it has a consistent schedule, you can just say like, oh, that's it for today. See you in 1 or 2 weeks, something like that.
Hmm.
For the next episode, maybe already give a bit of a hint of where it will be about. Um,
Yeah.
but I also don't remember like a distinct outro. To be fair, it's a bit odd, or like a way of ending an episode of a podcast doesn't come to mind.
Hmm. Yeah.
I do have one remark to say, which reminds me of some of our friends who started some podcast episodes. They mentioned one of the most difficult things to keep an eye on or to check during the podcast. I'm not sure if you still remember that remark. Maybe you don't.
I don't.
They said the most difficult thing is to not get racist during the recording, and I think we did a pretty good job in this episode. To be fair,
I
I just want to say that.
I would like to generalize the statement a little bit. Maybe let's try to say, not necessarily say anything which is cancelable, um, so to say.
Hmm.
Uh, some things which, well, not necessarily the public disagrees with, but with which we disagree. And well, racist for sure. We haven't been racist. Yeah.
No, yeah, I would say so.
Do you want to be
And
racist right now?
no, I have the feeling that most people listening to podcasts don't really like to have racist remarks, maybe even swear words in the podcast. Just a preference, really.
It also feels like we haven't really used any swear words up to this point.
No, I think we might like find one or two from me in the recording, but just innocent ones, so to say. We didn't actively do that. And just to wrap up that, I think the most important thing is just don't say anything you don't agree with or you regret. And in my normal life, day-to-day life, I tend to not do that. So not that difficult here.
Well, maybe you want to say something now, which you'll regret later. We can bleep it out, of course. I mean, we'll edit this. Any
Mm,
swear words you have open?
no,
Anything you feel
no,
like
not
saying?
nothing comes to
Anything
mind.
racist? We can always bleep anything out.
Yeah, I don't trust that.
No, okay.
Of course, no, of course I trust it. I'm not part of the editing.
Yeah,
How about you?
you have the files on your hand, so at least
That's true.
your own voice is recorded by you. So
Absolutely
anything
true.
racist you can bleep out immediately. Anything swearing you can bleep out. Uh,
Yeah, but I don't really feel like being racist. It's odd. It's odd.
what about swearing? I mean, I'm not saying asking you to be racist, of course, but
Uh, mm, I think I can go without for now.
okay,
Yes.
okay, no, fair. Stick to your guts. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Um.
is there
Yeah.
anything left to
For
discuss
the wrap up.
on how
No, that's
to?
exactly the point. I think I said most of what I wanted to say about starting a podcast. I actually am not going to try to summarize it. I think it was too much, a bit incoherent, maybe. I hope you can find your own way in it, and I hope you liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you liked it. Not necessarily our listeners, but you, Frank. Um,
Of course, of course, that's also
I for sure
important.
enjoyed this experience.
Yeah, it was fun.
Let's hope our future podcast will be even better than this one. I mean, this one of course is amazing. We did an amazing job, but let's hope that they will be even better in the future.
Absolutely. And until then, wait for the next one, I suppose.
Yes,
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 you gotta wait.
yeah.